Okay, so going to give you a couple of one-to-one forms that have come in recently and get your response to them as a start for this podcast. So we'll start at one end of the spectrum. Are there any particular areas your child is looking to improve? So the parent has put here ball mastery, ball control, decision making, accuracy, timing, speed, and build confidence. In the same sort of guys, looks like an experienced player. Are there any areas you want to work on? Tackling, ball control. Played up a couple of years, scouted last year, not been taken forwards. Lost his spark a little bit. But yeah, want some fine tuning to help bring back what he used to have. But the focus from this parent seems to be very much tackling, confidence, ball control, fine tune touches and power. So if you were responding to that, whether face to face or otherwise, what would you say?
Yeah, the there's for me there's not a lot in there you can do in one to ones. I think confidence is something that does work in a one to one. You can build up confidence, whether that's a child who is just not confident about joining sessions generally, or they've had a bad experience. So we know we've had a few over the years who've maybe been released after trial periods or something like that, and you just get them in and build the confidence back up, all with the aim of getting them back in a group football session though, rather than just working on confidence there. I suppose decision making is the big one that jumps out at me. It's massively important in it, and it's what makes players better than others. But for me, decision making in football is wholly based on the actions of your teammates, the opponents, where the goal is, the game state, and all of those types of things. And none of those things are present in a one-to-one. So you're not going to be able to train that decision making, which I think is the biggest thing and what it all comes back to. And people are right to want to improve decision making, absolutely. And it's no surprise that it is such a common thing that people ask for. But I think it's recognizing that decisions in the game are everything that matters, and when they're not there, you can't train them. So you know, when to pass, when to dribble is a common decision that I think people think about, but that the answer to that problem, it depends on what's happening on the pitch, where I am, where the ball is, where my teammates are, where the opponent is, all of those types of things. I have a decision to make based on that. In a one-to-one, I don't have a decision to make based on that. So I'm not training decision making. I'm training the thing that comes after the decision. And again, excuse me, I think that comes from an idea that decision making and then the action after the decision are two very separate stages. Whereas I certainly believe that it's more of a joint thing. So you can't separate them and train them separately and then put them back together.
Okay.
Ball and stuff like that, I suppose, is something. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of touches on the ball, but again, it goes back to the decision making thing. Touches on the ball in a game, you only take a touch based on what's happening in the game in front of you. You don't take a touch for the sake of taking a touch. So you're learning to take touches in a one to one just for the sake of taking a touch. In a game, you decide, perceive, and then take a touch based on that perception. So I believe that you need to train the two together at all times, and you can't separate them. So there's a lot lacking in one to ones. Unfortunately, they just don't do a lot of the things that people might think they would. I think people think, a one to one is focused time on an individual player. They're going to get more football actions than they would in the group sessions, and that makes a lot of sense. But what we're saying here is they're not doing football actions anymore, because football actions only exist in the game based on opponents, defender, teammates, all of that type of thing, and those things aren't there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm wrong.
No, no, no. It's good. It's good because this is why we want to do this today because we're full disclosure. We offer one-to-ones as part of our offering, but we're seeing a lot of parents that are asking for things that you just can't do in a one-to-one. And I think everybody needs to be a bit more open and honest before parents part with their hard earned for something that's actually potentially not going to work. And this is one thing that we do. So with that example, those two examples that we've just given, with an example that we're going to talk about in a second, it's we give information to parents to say explain what they can and can't do. Some parents still then want to come to that first what we class as an assessment session. I think then it's much easier to explain it once they see and you stood next to group sessions. You start to this the light bulb starts to go. I suppose like light bulb starts to come on. You mentioned confidence, which we'll come back to later because that is a big part of this. But yeah, the things like the decision making, the things like tackling is another one. I thought about this a lot. I think people struggle to understand what we mean when we talk about things like using the game as a starting point for our training. And so people will say things like, well, yeah, but they can't start playing football until they can kick a football and all these sorts of things. My argument for that is, well, explain tackling because there's no one on this earth that's telling a kid at grassroots level that, oh yeah, once that player goes through, you run to the right side of him and then you're going to do this slide and you're going to hook your ball, hook, and no one's practicing that. I don't want to go off tangent too much on this, but that's a conversation for another time. But in terms of things like tackling, like decision making, tackling to tackle it's based on what the opponent's doing. So to do that at a one-to-one, it would involve me that's nearly 40, uh, to explain to a child of potentially 7 or 8 years old, yeah, here's how you win a 50-50 mile. It's just not going to work. And so there's certain principles maybe you can talk about, getting low and all these sorts of things. But again, getting low, yeah, that's fine in some instances, but might not need to in others. Who knows? But it's all based on what's going on, and the only way to train that is to play and then be guided. So the what we're trying to talk to parents about today is we're not saying that one-to-ones are bad. They're not. They have their place, and we'll talk about that shortly. It's just you need to understand what they're for and what they can and can't do because we're seeing so much stuff online now, and it's easy to fall for these things on social media and think, oh well, that kid's just slammed it in top corner off the bar. So my kid's going to be able to do that if they go to a few one-to-ones, and that's probably what we want to talk about more so today. The other example that we've had recently, I'll just pull that up. So sort of at the other end of the spectrum, going back to that sort of confidence thing, is been training with a club, a grassroots club. However, played first 3 games, struggling to make the step up to actual match day. Therefore, looking to build confidence and work on particular skills through one-to-one coaching, first touch, ball control, and tackling technique. So this is a boy who I think looking at it is probably 10 years old. Sounds like he's maybe just joining, just starting formal football, I suppose. Sounds like he's not played too much, bit more of a beginner. So the same thing applies here. This is probably what we get a lot of as well. It's the other end of the spectrum where kids are coming to us that are new to football and struggling with that step up to grassroots. But it's for parents. My advice to that parent was to start with good quality group coaching in the right environment with the right level of challenge because he's obviously gone into this and maybe because he's playing against children that have played for a long time in a match situation, he'd be forgiven for looking behind or feeling like he's behind. But the only way to get him up to speed is going to be when he's playing with and against other children. It might just be at the minute that he needs a different environment, needs to be taken out of what he's doing, or keep doing that, but add something else, add a supplement session where he's playing against kids of a similar ability. He feels more comfortable. He's not pressured. He's not a team, and he can build up his skills and so forth that are going to then help him for that team. If I get him in for a one-to-one, and I tell his dad, yeah, brilliant, bring him to me once a week now for the next 10 weeks, and he's going to be absolutely flying. I'd be lying
Mhm.
because he might build his confidence, but as soon as he's finished playing against my mannequins everything starts to come to life when he gets on that football pitch. Those mannequins don't chase him, those cones don't chase him. So yeah, this is the stuff we want to talk about today. But next question for you: why do one-to-ones help? Do we think if some people are hell bent on saying that one-to-ones help kids, and we've seen them help kids, what is it? What is it about them that does help?
Yeah, I mean, Personally, for me, the only thing that I would say that the real benefit of it is if a child is really low on confidence for whatever reason, has had a bad experience, and they just need to spend time in a football type environment with a coach who is just going to build them up and say well done and set them little activities to do, which they're going to get a lot of success in, entirely with a view to encourage them to play football and do football training activities, not to prolong that for any length of time or to make them keep coming to that than any more than you need to be doing. As we keep coming back to it's not football training. It's when you're in a football training session and you've got teammates, opponents, goals to attack and goals to defend, and spaces coming and going within there. You're performing football actions by definition, and so from being in that session, you will be training those football actions and how you're seeing what's going on in the game and making decisions based on that, and that's you're going to lead you to development. When those things aren't present, as in a one-to-one, for me, you can't be training football. You can be training things that look like you're training football, but I think you can potentially create bad habits. If someone, I think the last one you said, someone said first touch and stuff like that. If you're in a one-to-one and you're asked to work on your first touch, the ball's going to come to you and you're just going to set that touch exactly where you personally want it to go. Whereas in a game, you're not going to have that option. You're going to have to set that touch where it can go based on where the pressure's coming to you, where the goal is, where your teammates are that you're going to play the next pass to or something like that. And that whole first part of where am I going to take this first touch based on what's going around me, that's skill. That's being a good player, being able to take that information and then put the touch into the right place. So yeah, of course, a better player is able to do that more. So to develop that, you want them to train that situation. One-to-ones miss the entire first bit out and just get a player kicking a ball into a space and it looks nice and it looks neat and tidy. But if you want to be really uber critical about one-to-ones, if you're putting a player in a situation where they've got all the time in the world and they take a nice foot touch out of their feet, if they're getting conditioned to do that over and over and over again, and then they try to do it in a game, they're probably just going to lose the ball instantly. So, and you can link this back to the confidence thing. You can bring people into one-to-ones to build up their confidence. But if you're building up their confidence in artificial situations that aren't going to transfer to the game situation, that could potentially have a really negative impact on confidence. It's like, oh, shit, I've been coming to all these one-to-one sessions. I've been getting better and better. When I played my game this weekend, I'm as bad as I was before I started these one-to-ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much on that side of things.
Yeah, we'll try to tread the line carefully because we do want to be clear that we feel, I personally feel there is a place for them, but if they're sold as what they actually do,
Yeah,
as opposed to we're going to make you X, Y, and Z, we have plenty of play.
no, that's a big thing with it for me, Town. They are. We're saying they're like inherently flawed. There is so much missing from them. There's no opponents. There's no teammates. There's all of this decision making is not there. So you're in a really difficult position already as a coach to try and make it purposeful, to try and actually do something that is going to help them in a game, because that's what this is, football training. If it doesn't help them better in a game of football, then it's bad training by definition, isn't it? And all I think our frustration is when they're being sold as these special things that are giving those extra 1%, these marginal gains that you're not getting from elsewhere, and that's the issue. It's like it's not doing that. It's doing very, very, very little. It's not guaranteeing these extra benefits that people sell them as.
Think the We're going to talk in a bit more detail about what an inverted commas good one-to-one might look like and why shortly, because you touched on some points there, particularly about like obviously the opponents and having interference and so on. I think just touching on why they do help so many kids is the confidence thing. We've seen that a lot. I remember a little boy Alfie we had a long time ago. He was crying at the gate at one of our sessions because he didn't want to come in to do the group stuff. I think he was about 8 years old at the time, and his dad had tried everything. So we just agreed, let's just get him in one-to-one. Let's just try him with me for half an hour, 45 minutes, and we'll just play some football. And 4 weeks later, 4 sessions later, he then had the confidence to go and join the group sessions. Fast forward 2 years down the line, I think he joined the grassroots team, won player of the season and one thing or another. That's not down to that one-to-one, by the way. It's down to the fact that he was just given some space, a little bit of a confidence boost by me just telling him that he's good enough to join these sessions, hearing it from somebody else other than his dad. And for stuff like that, fantastic. Players recently that come to us, but then also play for a team. So they're training 2 or 3 times a week and playing a match. They'd probably be out with the ball anywhere in the garden. They just want to come and see and play with a foot tech coach. They enjoy coming to a session with me. We have a decent kickabout. They'd have been doing it anyway in the garden, but it's a bit more, perhaps a bit more purposeful, and they've got me telling them how good they are at football. So these sorts of things, it's I think confidence, connection is another thing. I think they really help. With some kids just injured. We've had that feedback before, haven't we, from parents that said, I get what you're saying. They just like coming to see you guys. And that has its place. That is absolutely fine. At no point in time have we said, yeah, come to us and you're going to be Ronaldo in 12 weeks and look at this that this kid can do. You'll be able to do that.
Yeah, you
So
just want parents to be able to make more of an informed decision, don't you? And know the pros and because a parent is understandably going to look at this the way they're packaged up and shown on Instagram and stuff like that as, oh, these are really beneficial. These are going to make a lot of difference to my player, and we're just saying you need to just look at that a bit more closely or step back from it, however you want to phrase it. And if you always go back to the game of football and look at the game of football and what that looks like and what players are doing in that game and why they're doing it, and then compare it to the drills they're doing in a one-to-one, you can start to see probably quite quickly that then they're not doing the same things.
mm,
And also on the one-to-one activities, though, if you've got a kid at home in a garden dribbling around mannequins or playing off a bounce board or something like that, that's brilliant. I've got all the time in the world for that. Have fun, enjoy yourself. Some of those bounce boards flick it up in the air, don't they? You can practice your overhead kicks and whatever. You'll have hours of fun on there. I've got no problem with that. My problem is when people are selling those drills as really high end, really effective training, and we're saying it's not. You bring out a mannequin and a bounce board when you've got no players to play with. It's not. Oh, we've got 5 players here. Let's get them dribbling around a mannequin. That's just madness.
I think parents are forgiven, and we use that term a lot on here because of what they see on social media and then what's been said on the sidelines and things. It's like as parents ourselves, you do worry about kids falling behind, and they've heard that so and so has been having some one-to-one sessions at this place. It's like, oh well, yeah, it's easy to think of it like a PT session. If we wanted to go to the gym and work on X, Y, we get a PT. But that's just because you're lifting weight. There's nothing else happening. That's fine. And but so parents are probably linking it to things like that and thinking, oh, personal coach, a private coach. So yeah, 100%. I think it comes from a place of wanting them to help them from a confidence point of view. Maybe not getting enough individual attention in their grassroots teams. Completely get it. Um,
It works in a lot of other things, doesn't it? You think about, I don't swimming lesson or a music lesson or something like that. If you're in a group of 10 in one of those lessons and then instead you're in a lesson just by yourself, then yeah, that's going to help. You're going to get more focus time from the teacher. But the problem with the one-to-one in football is when you take the game of football and then strip it down to having just one player, you're not doing football anymore. When
yeah,
you're taking a group of 10 swimmers and you've still got one person swimming in the pool, you're still swimming.
yeah, definitely. I think it's starting. I think it's coming a lot from care, and trying to help children, which is fine, and that's unfortunately what gets preyed on quite a lot as well. But we, we're not going to sit here and say that you shouldn't do it, or we're just saying it. It's just understand what they are going to do and what they're not going to do, and then make the call. I've had I've had two recently where I've had the conversation with the parents after the session to explain, and it's still you can see there's like they've having this thing in their brain where, oh yeah, I get what you're saying, but oh, this looks really good. This look and that's the danger that the kids buzzing because they've had 30 minutes or whatever. They've smashed in loads of goals. We've had a lot of fun. We do make them fun, don't we? It's not like an assault course army thing. It's a good session, loads of reps, but you can see the parent like, oh yeah, yeah, I understand it, and they just have this thing, and it's so interesting to watch because you've literally, and the term I use all the time is, I am not trying to talk myself out of earning a living,
Yeah,
but, and this is the thing we've said numerous times, we could set this up as purely a one-to-one business, and it'd be so much simpler, so much less admin, uh, probably physically more demanding, but the it'd be so much simpler and easier. But we don't do that because we know that if children genuinely want to get better at football, it's the good quality group coaching that they need. But these things have become this like almost like, okay, do you think you want this? Let's talk about it and then let's explain. And then if you still want that because your child loved it, well, that is completely up to you. But we'll always do 100%. We'll help them, but you know where we are now with it. So yeah, so that hopefully people are starting to understand a little bit more about what we're sort of getting at there. With the last point on that with why do they help? I suppose I've got another interesting example of a boy that I worked with over the summer. He's in a Premier League academy, and he was given feedback, and that feedback was that he needed to work on his left foot. He needed to get better at finishing with his left foot. I hate feedback, player development plans, and all that. You and I spoke about it a lot. It's so generic. There's often no substance to it, and it's like, what does that mean? So if he turns up to his next 10 games and scores 5 goals of his left foot, does that mean that he's now 10 out of 10 on his left foot? But for that boy, having someone to come and talk to about it, and someone to come and take him through a few exercises, again explaining to him that this doesn't mean it's going to transfer. But I think sometimes if people are given, certainly at that level, but then we're seeing it out with general feedback from even grassroots where they're told something, and then it's like, well, now what? What do I just go home and just do left foots against the wall or whatever? But actually, I think sometimes if you're coming to the right person, having a conversation about it, there can be a little bit of a psychological relief, I suppose. Where I'm not saying it's gonna say the confidence will increase because of that, but just having that place to come and I feel like you don't feel lost. Am I making sense there?
yeah. I think something that just comes to me that the so like an academy player getting the feedback from to go work on X, Y, and Z. Academies aren't putting on one-to-one sessions for their players to solve that problem. When a kid gets signed for an academy, you're not told, right, okay, Thursdays is your group session, Sundays are your matches, Tuesdays is your one-to-one session. One-to-one coaches are predominantly just people on Instagram and Facebook who, yeah, well-intentioned, nice people, whatever, but you're not seeing top coaches with a lot of understanding around this delivering one-to-one sessions, and it comes back to this thing of it's because it's not training the game, it's not doing what it thinks it looks like. If it was, then obviously surely a big part of academy programs would be getting all of their players to do as many one-to-one sessions as they possibly could do. So I think that that's quite telling that that isn't a standard part of these programs. It's just something that exists outside of that.
Do you think do you think the bridge any gaps? And what I mean by that is you think about us when we were kids. We were outside a lot more. We were playing a lot more. Probably, I think there's still plenty of kids that are out in the garden kicking a ball about, but maybe not as much now with screens and all the other stuff that's going on. So it's probably just fewer reps in general. Now, I want to be careful with what I say with reps because I like my realistic reps, but generally, our kids kicking footballs less than we were. So do they bridge that gap a little bit? But again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to transfer to the game, does it? But
If you by yourself, you wanting some, I don't know, you wanting to work on receiving a ball, then yeah, you'd need another person to pass you the ball. But it seems a bit much to pay for a one-to-one just for that, I suppose. I don't know. It's that that's probably one of my another issue with one to ones to maybe help people understand. If you're receiving a pass in a game of football, you start to work out where that ball's coming, when it's coming, where it's coming to, before the player with the ball kicks it. Because then they're not just completely static and then kick all of a sudden. That their body's moving, they're looking where they're going to pass, they're starting to move higher parts of their body, and then eventually they kick the ball. So by the time the ball's kicked, more skillful players have picked up that information from the players' body's movement and are able to start anticipating that. When I see one-to-one sessions where there's a player doing passes off a wall or passes off a bounce board and the coach is stood there just watching them doing it and saying, well done, the very least that could be happening there is the coach could actually be the person playing that pass, because then the player receiving the pass is doing what they're going to do in the game. They're going to start to look at the coach and the other parts of their body and start to pick up those cues and signals about when the ball's coming, where the ball's coming. So at least that's something they're going to have that's going to be happening in the game. A ball coming to you off a board isn't going to happen in a game. There's none of that decision making beforehand from the signals that the player's giving, and it's things like that. Like I said, one-to-ones are really limited, and there's only a few things you can do to add a bit of realism in there. And having a coach actually play the pass instead of getting them to pass off a bounce board is one very small win you can get. So it's just a bit bizarre when you see coaches stood next to players receiving passes off a bounce board.
Yeah, it's try to tip the odds in the favour in it a little bit with that. And since you introduced us to all the skill acquisition stuff, and the when we started changing the way that we do things, I've sent myself crazy trying to work out how to make these as realistic as possible. I think there's things that, as I say, tip it towards it. So, like you say, the coach should be passing it, so the players at least picking up some sort of information. I think what they can get there is visual cues on stuff like you think about a centre back, for example. I did this with Max before he went off to Wolves. He We were looking at when a long ball comes through from the opposing team, and how you can see the way that somebody shapes up can give you a lot of information as to whether that ball is going to travel high or low. And so little things like that again, they're not going to get that from a board. I've started to do stuff where I maybe chase a little bit, or I stand in the way of them. So instead of the mannequin, it's me, and I'm almost like a dummy defender.
Yeah,
I get nutmegged a few times, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, it's these little things, but still, it's not. I am one person in a game. They're going to have a lot of other stuff. And the other thing that I've learned from you is, where are their eyes? What are they doing with their eyes? Because when I see all this stuff online and I'm seeing kids looking at the ball on the floor, I want to scream. And there's people applauding it, great drill, and oh, look at them doing all these skills, this ball mastery stuff. But look at where their eyes are. And if you're doing that 2 or 3 times a week and reducing your group training, it's not going to work well in the longer term, because we want kids with their head up, so they're taking all this information around them. So I'm really conscious of that now when I'm doing it, and that's not using artificial stuff like look at this cone. I'm asking them to look at certain areas, or encouraging them to look at certain areas of like the goal. Maybe have a section off the goal and things like this. So we're going to talk in a second about this, but yeah, there is a difference between a one-to-one and a better one-to-one, I suppose, is the way of putting it. But they can increase ball contact time and on all that sort of stuff, but not all ball contact time is equal. And if you are, I suppose one of the things I did want parents to understand is that if you've got a child that enjoys doing maybe 2 to 3 group sessions per week in a match, if you're going to get rid of one of those for a one-to-one, that probably won't be the best thing longer term. There's a lot more nuance to it, obviously, but I think what parents are forgiven for thinking is, oh, well, if I get them more one-to-ones, but then they do 2 or 3 one-to-ones, maybe one training session a week with a team in a match, that's going to be better than 2 or 3 group training sessions in a match. And if the training's right, it's you're probably best doing that, is what we're getting at here. What changes do we actually see in kids after, in inverted commas, good one-to-ones? I think we sort of touched on that. I think the confidence thing is a biggie. I think you build that connection with the coach and that relationship. I think that's been certainly for myself. The It's nice. That's probably the word for it. Like they enjoy coming. We have a great time. They leave happy. They leave feeling positive. And we've spoke about this with Foot Tech about some of the changes we're possibly introducing shortly. And it's about this. It's about them having that relationship with I guess, a role model or somebody they look up to that they'll enjoy coming to play football with. Or sorry, can't say play football with. They come enjoy kicking a football with. Anything else you'd say on that? Any changes we actually see?
Probably just being wary of the other things that you've just touched on there, and we've definitely had lots of people saying this to us as well. You know, they can do all the skills in the world in their training, but they don't do it in a game. And you got to be careful. Like if you've got them doing ball skills with a ball in front of them, and there's no reason to go forward or anything like that. If you assume that anything you do in training is becoming a habit, you are conditioning them to have the ball still in front of them, not really going anywhere, taking lots of touches, keeping their head down. Is that how you want them to play in a match on a Sunday? It's you need to be careful that they're not getting conditioned to do things that are the opposite of what you want them to do in a game, because that again, that by definition, that can't be good training.
Well, you spoke about the shoulder drop example before, and that was in a group session where you got a boy to demonstrate a shoulder drop, but He'd done it what 10 minutes earlier in the game and absolutely nailed it. But as soon as you asked him to do it to show everybody on his own, it just looked like a robot.
Yeah,
And
it was just really interesting. He did it so naturally in the game, and then I tried to use him as the example, and it just looked completely different. And yeah, it always stays with that experience. But when he did it in the game, it was it worked so well because of where the ball was, the direction, the speed it was moving, where the defender was coming to him, where the space was, and he just in that moment just executed it perfectly based on that situation. When I asked him to do it 10 minutes later with no situation, I was just asking him to dribble out into open grass in front of the group and say do a shoulder drop, and there was no timing involved in it anymore. There wasn't a defender coming to him at a certain time, the ball moving in a certain direction, where it all had to come together for it to work. It was all just it just looked really really artificial, and I see that quite a bit on some of these one-to-one and small group sessions. You'll see, and you'll see some really incredible academy players, and when they're in these 1v1 situations, they're beating people for fun, and these shoulder drops are amazing. You then see the next part of the video, and they're now doing it against mannequins, and it's the same thing. It's just it's something, the speed and the timing, it's just wrong.
yeah,
It just doesn't look right. And it's because it's not got the first bit, which is the reason for the action, the information, the thing that's happening in the game. And as we keep saying, they are one thing. It's not have the information, then do the action. It's one and the same. So you need to keep it the same when you're training it.
there was that thing. One, I think it were in one of the studies that we've seen where they said that even sprint speed changed based on if an individual was sprinting on their own or sprinting against somebody.
Or with a ball.
Yeah, and I think one of the examples I used was like, yeah, if you say you're going to go for a sprint and sprint 100 meters at the park or whatever, or you're sprinting 100 meters because you're being chased by a lion, it's it's going to look very very different. Probably dare see you run a bit faster with the other
It's
thing.
like that again, and it's just to try and get parents to actually to really watch what's happening. So you mentioned earlier about like just having players dribbling and then getting them dribbling while you're chasing them. It's going to instantly change how they're dribbling. Instantly, you can have a group of 10 players and give them a ball each and say, all right, just dribble around this area. You can have a group of 10 players with a ball each. And even if you just put one defender in there, all of those players are going to be now looking for where that defender is. And that's what we want them to do. We want them to be looking at the game and the ball, not just looking at the ball. But if there's no reason for them to look at the way away from the ball, even if they're really good players, if you've just given them all a ball each and said dribble, even really good players who can play with their head up are still going to be playing looking at the ball, because there's no reason to get your head up. We players in a game of football do things, but everything's for a reason.
Yeah.
So it needs to be there.
Have we seen any players that benefited massively with something else that I'd wrote down earlier? And yeah, but we have to be careful what what we mean by benefited. And I think there's plenty of examples of children that have come for a short-term boost. Maybe they're having a really bad time at the grassroots team and they just want to come and just score a few goals and just start to feel like a footballer again if they're having a bit of crisis of confidence, 100% that sort of stuff. More recently, which is something that we as I say, we spoke about with Foot Tech, is this: we've had a few players because normally we've had players come to us for one-to-ones that aren't part of Foot Tech, they aren't a member of our group sessions, and and that's fine. We turn a lot away when we explain what they can and can't do based on what our parents say. So we explain that, and if they still want to come, that's up to them, and we still have this conversation. But a lot of them we turn away and we say no, we can't help with these sorts of things. But then we more recently we've had a couple of members want them as a supplement to what they already do with us and their grassroots teams. And the feedback that we're getting is that they're loving it. The kids are loving it. But what's interesting is the parents are speaking less about the technical, oh yeah, well they've got better at the X, Y, and Z. They're telling us more confidence and how it's transferring to their team. They're trying things. They may be shooting when they were gonna instead of they may be shooting more when they should be shooting more as opposed to passing it off or getting rid of the ball quickly. And the other thing is that connection side. They're just loving coming and being with their coach. It's like having their own private coach, and they get a lot from that. And I think that's the thing that I see help a lot is a lot of these kids they've got it in them. They can do some of this stuff. They can shoot, pass, and dribble. It's sometimes just hearing that they can do that from somebody else that they respect, to somebody that knows what they're talking about in terms of football. And it's just unlocking that little thing inside their head, which it fascinates me. I'm fascinated with the brain and how all this psychological stuff works. Who knows? I don't know what happens, but a lot of them just all of a sudden have this lift. And then when that ball comes to them, instead of blasting it away, they might actually take that touch and try that dribble, have that first time shot. Whereas a couple of weeks ago, they might not, because they in their own head they just thought they weren't able to do it, even though they were. So that's where I don't know. If you would you add anything to that in terms of benefits that we've seen?
Yeah, that has to be success, doesn't it? When you get someone who's not ready to play a proper football training session yet, or they're not backing themselves for whatever reason, and you're able to make them believe that they're better than they were before the one-to-one sessions. That can only be a positive thing. Just you just made me think. Then you see these videos, don't you, of a player doing cutting inside and stick it in the top corner in a one-to-one session, and then they do it on a match day, and the two videos are posted next to each other, like A caused B type thing, and you never see you never see, which I'm sure there are many examples of the shots that go wild and wide and high in the one-to-one session, and then linked to the shots that they miss in a real match as well. The coaches seem to take credit for the ones that go well, but if you've caused those ones, then have you not caused the ones that miss as well? But yeah, they don't seem to make the final reel for some
Yeah, of
reason.
course, of course. When do they start to work against development, do you
Too
think?
much.
I
Just
think
too.
I guess we've touched on that a bit, haven't
If you're doing too much, then you're potentially developing bad habits where whatever, for example, head down or slow play or not moving forward or not always looking for a forward option and all of these types of things. Yeah, just if you're spending too much time doing these things.
It's like that comfort without challenge, isn't it? That's something that I've come to learn is like, yeah, you if you look at them objectively, it's yeah, they're very they're taking that touch, they're getting their head up, they're taking another touch, getting it's just they're not going to have that time in the game, and that's the thing with the good and bad one-to-ones is can we just lower that a little bit, that scale? Can we make it closer? Can we give them a little bit of something to think about? And that's what Yeah, that's what I've seen. It's just that they can become too comfortable. That's one thing, a big thing I talk to parents about, particularly with the beginner players. If you've got an experienced player that's used to, I hate using that word experience when you're talking about like 10-year-old kids, but there we are. That that's played a lot of football, played a lot of matches, fine. They sort of they've had the challenge. They know about playing with and against other people. When you've got a complete beginner and you get parents such as the boy earlier on that's not played that much, then having them do a block of one-to-ones or replace a group session with a one-to-one, that can do a lot of harm because all of a sudden when we plonk them back into that group environment, they're not going to have that time on the ball that they had. And it just becomes very different. The sooner we expose them to the group stuff and the opponents and teammates, the better. It's just about doing that on a scale which we talk about forever with in terms of the games-based stuff that we do in our group sessions. That's where I think people get this. That's where I think a lot of it comes from is you have if they've never been to any other football training before other than their grassroots team, parents will be forgiven for thinking that's what football training looks like. And if my child's not good enough for it, I need to get them a one-to-one to get them to that level like these other boys and girls. But it's not. It's find them the training where it's scaled to their ability, but they're playing in these environments that are taking pieces of the game and allowing them to develop at their pace. If they're playing for a team, then the team they're looking after the team, aren't they? The coaches and things. It's the team they need to look after. Our review is more on the individual side, but that's their prerogative. Ours is looking at the individual, and so providing these environments where they're getting what they need get better at football. But what's in the interesting thing that was there was big demand for that a few years ago, and there still is, but the demand for one-to-ones has gone off the chart in the last few years, which has been really interesting to watch as a result of I think social media as much as anything. Okay, so what briefly, what does a good one? So if you've got a parent that's going to a one-to-one and they've listened to this, what is it they should be looking out for if what would we class as a bad one-to-one?
Watching lights.
That Joe, I was going to come on to that. So, so I and this is why I don't take off any of our old stuff on YouTube or anything because I think there's far too much ego in football.
Mm.
But I do you remember when we look back through I look back through the Facebook post from ages ago and I found when we used to blindfold kids and all that. It's like if I wanted to be funny about it, I could delete everything we've ever done that we now don't agree with because we've learnt a lot. Or I could keep it on there and just say to yeah, but look, we've evolved because I think there's this thing in football where you, there's so much ego. There's so much like, well, yeah, but you said this before. Yeah, because that was my knowledge then. But then I've read a book or two, or been on a few courses. So I'm not going to apologize for what we used to because at that time, that's what I believed. And that was the extent of my knowledge. When I used to believe that going on a level two was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get everything I need from that. But then, I mean, probably massive. 90% of it was you getting us to think about, well, no, there's more than just courses. So all of the stuff we used to do is still online. All the ball mastery stuff, and I won't take that off because I think it's a story. It shows us how far we've come. But what Nick's getting at is exactly. I had I've done one-to-ones forever, and I just loved stuff. I loved equipment. I thought it looked great, and I thought it was doing this, this, and this. And one of the things that I got that I loved were the flash up lights, the reaction stuff. And I remember a dad coming up to me because he'd seen me do a one-to-one while his kid was in our group sessions. And this is where I started to question things quite a lot. He comes up to me, he goes, "Oh, yeah, I'd like to maybe book a one-to-one for him." So yeah, yeah, what's he need, whatever else. But yeah, because just seeing the lights, that you were doing there, and I went, but what about football? Well, what about all the, ball stuff that we're doing? Like, you just focus on these lights. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to review this because that ain't what it's about. And you just learn, don't you? You just think. So my thing now was I have 30 to 45 minutes or what have you to cram as much get the ball involved as much as possible, and that's what it's got. I've got rid of all of that now. They're so simple now. What we do, basic ball striking, running with the ball, and whatever. Taking it in different areas and shooting from different areas and things like that. It's very, very basic stuff, but I've found that the kids like it more, and we get so many more touches of that ball as a result of it. But yeah, that I think I think if you go in somewhere and they've got all this stuff set up and it looks the part, it's just take a step back and yeah,
And also listen to the coaching as well. If you're in a one-to-one and the coach is shouting things like red cone, V-turn through the poles. Not one of those phrases would make any sense if you said it to a player on a football pitch. So you can't be training for football in that moment. You're doing something else. So yeah, just because a coach is shouting a lot or being really enthusiastic, what are they actually saying? And if it's things like a V turn, then yeah, I'd question how that's actually football.
I think yeah, those ones that you see when it's like they dribble to one cone, they do this turn, they dribble to another cone and do this turn. It's just take the turn, receive from the coach, do the turn, have a shot. At least put it into some sort of context.
There's another one there actually. Going back to the bounce board things, you'll see play right do 20 right foot passes against that board or something like that, and then the coaching becomes, oh yeah, you need to punch it in a bit harder to make sure it travels back to you properly. And I start looking at it thinking, well, hang on a minute. If this player's, let's say, 10 yards away from the board and they're being asked to make the ball hit the board and bounce back 10 yards to their foot so they can do it again, then you're probably asking them to overhit that first 10-yard pass. So again, is that good training or bad training if you're getting them to overhit passes? So yeah, there's a lot when you really look at them and see what's actually happening and always comparing it to the game of football, there's a loads of just a bit wacky things going on.
Yeah, and I were big on the ladders, the hurdles, and everything else. That's all gone, and it's just focus now. Focus time on ball, and I just think that's the best way to do them, because that was the other thing, wasn't it, that we were getting asked to make kids faster and one thing or another, and the more that we've delved into it, the more it's like to get faster for football. It's got to play more football. I heard a great thing the other day. Thierry Henry was talking about Bruno Fernandes and sort of as much as saying he's not fast, he's not an athlete, he's not slow, but he's not the fastest on that pitch. But he looks the fastest on that pitch because his brain's working faster than everybody else. I speak look at
Right, and that's decision making. And the only way to get better at decision making is to practice it. Decisions are all based on opponents, ball, teammates, space, goals.
yeah.
That's the only way you can therefore train decision making. They are not involved in a one to one.
I've always been a big fan of speed because I was slow and but the more I've read into that and it's like even with kids in particular, the difference you can make physically to a child's speed is so minimal because they've not even gone through puberty and everything else yet. But the difference you can make to the speed of thought can be massive if they're playing in the right sort of environment and doing the right sort of training. The one thing I would say about flashing lights and things like that is if kids like it
Yeah.
and it's fun, there's potentially a place for it. Dot dot dot. But understand that it's still not football. Understand that you've maybe wasted 10 or 15 minutes of time that could have been spent kicking a ball. So it's that for parents to understand as well that yeah, if your kid
If they're
likes
sold
it,
as fun, if they're sold as a fun activity rather than sold as this is going to improve your decision making, then that, yeah, absolutely that.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Next question was what does a bad one to one look like? But I think we've probably people probably got the idea now, but yeah, certainly watch their eyes would be my thing. Their eyes down all the time. Going back to that thing earlier about dribbling to one cone and doing a turn, dribbling to another, doing a turn. Their head's not up. It's just not. They're just looking at the cone and the ball. So definitely that sort of stuff when it's sort of overly. Sorry, Nick, you're going to say.
I was just going to say, and it's just some things can look like they're doing it. Some things can look really close, and it can be quite subtle. So, just thinking of another common one, like if you've got a mannequin and the coach saying, right, you're going to check off the mannequin, you're going to receive and on your back foot, and you're going to score, whatever it is. So that you're looking, it looks like they're learning to check off a defender. It looks like they're learning to, create that separation between them so they can receive the ball, which is a really important skill to do. But when in a game, when to check off that player depends on what the player does. It depends on when the person is going to pass you the ball. So it's all about the movement at the moment. It's all about when you do it, where you move to, how far you separate from the defender, in which direction you separate from the defender. Do you go to the left or do you go to the right? All of this decision making happens as a result of the game, and then you pull away from your marker. So all of that can look like you're training the same skill because none of the decision making part of it is there. Again, you're not doing that. Although it looks, you see what I mean? That's an example of something that looks really close. It looks like you are doing something which you're going to straight away take into a game, but because those key elements are missing, it's close, but it's not. It's not football.
Yeah, and I had that exact example with a boy a few weeks ago whose dad wanted to look at forward strikers movement, and I had to spend a lot of time explaining to him that his movement is going to be dictated by exactly what you've just said there. So I can put him into certain areas, but then if that defender moves two steps to the right, that might change things. So because people use this thing like when they're talking about doing muscle memory is something, isn't it, that people talk about like, oh yeah, but if they do that, then it just becomes like to do all these turns and it just becomes muscle memory. But your muscles don't have memories for a start, and it just because they can do it at that session does not mean they're going to be able to do it when the time comes because there's so much more going. The muscles don't remember how to react to a defender that's now moved to the left after checking to the right and these sorts of things. So
Yeah, but
it
again, on just look, yeah, just hold that. There are, is there a professional footballer in the world who can't do a step over in a one-to-one session? I don't think there is. How many professional footballers in the Premier League can you name that you've actually seen do a step over in a game? It's a very, very, very small amount. It's not that they can't physically do it. It's a different thing being doing it in a game based on
mm,
opponents,
yeah.
teammates, that type of thing. It's not about you need to learn that the like the function, how to do it, and then you start applying it in context. It just doesn't work like that.
I think the thing on here as well would be if you're listening to this and then you go through and a coach is not explaining these things, if that's what you're looking for, obviously, if you're just saying, look, I want my kid to come and play some football with another coach, kick a ball around with another coach, whatever, fine. But if you come into these things because you've asked them to work on decision making and tackling and one thing or another, and they're not giving you this honest advice, then it's either that they don't have the knowledge or they do, but they're more concerned with their bank balance, in which case that then it's entirely up to yourself what you decide to do. We'll never begrudge anybody trying to earn a living or whatever else, but it's honest. It's just being honest with parents because we're living in a world at the minute where people are trying to keep up with others. There's so much comparison online and things. It's not nice. And if parents are then parting with lots of money on the thinking that they're going to make their kid amazing, it might not. And so it's just because we've seen so much recently, haven't we? And it's getting to the point where it's becoming a little bit ridiculous, and there's people applauding these things where it's like it's not doing what they're saying it's doing. And maybe we're a bit early to the party with this, but I think there's so much stuff coming out and there's more education happening now where I think hopefully more people will wake up to it that they have their place, but they're flawed in terms of what some people promise. And that will lead on to my next point about how social media can distort parents' understanding because you're seeing pro players doing it, and it's like, well, yeah, they probably might be doing a bit in the off season or whatever else, and maybe some stuff after sessions and what have you. Um, and then it's like, yeah, but if they're doing it, then we must do it because that's why they're so good at football. It's probably not why they're so good at football, though. That's the thing. But again, yeah, you're forgiven. You're forgiven for thinking it, aren't you? The one thing that I did want to ask you was what what would you say to somebody who's coming at it from a my child's never kicked a football before?
Just kick a football with them then.
Mm.
Like you do it, and not that's really powerful. If you can spend that time with your child as a parent, then that's adding something to that training session. You're developing a bond there. And if it's a really young child and they're getting to spend some time with their parent, playing with a parent, that can be a real massive driver in terms of their motivation and engagement with football. Which, if you're wanting to be a good footballer, that's why you're wanting to get in that one-to-one session in the first place. Well, actually, not getting the one-to-one and you going and playing with them outside yourself in the park, that could be much more impactful. But also, yeah, just what someone who's never kicked a ball, so you're going to pay for a coach just to stand opposite them and just kick a ball back and forth, aren't you? That's all it's going to come down to. You don't need to be any kind of footballer to be able to do that yourself with your child.
No, and I think the 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 amount of kids that we've had that parents have said they've barely played football, barely kicked a ball before, that we just don't turn them away, and they've never not been able to get involved. It goes back to that point of trying to find somewhere where it's an environment for them and a challenge for them.
Because
And
exactly that, you remember it's a long time ago now, but there was a young boy, wasn't there? A young boy who we wouldn't do it with that age anymore. But it's that as well. It's also if this is their first ever football experience and you're coming to meet a strange adult that you've never met before and you just kick it, that is, that might not be fun. Whereas you put them into a group session with children of their own age where it's going to be wild and yeah, they won't have played before and it'll take some getting used to maybe, but at least there'll be fun there. That one-to-one session, if that's what they think football is now, they might think, oh, I didn't really like that.
yeah, 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 and it goes back to that point of it becomes harder to introduce them to the other stuff
Yeah.
because they're so comfortable in that environment. Okay, so just coming to the end now, in terms of what we want to be clear on is we're not saying don't do them. We're not saying that they are this evil. They're not because if kids are out with a football more often than not, we're happy with that. It's not a bad thing. What we're saying is that they're sometimes missold, and hopefully now you get an idea of what it is they are and are not doing. If you're still happy with that and want to go, fantastic, then go. If your kid loves it, there's lots of positive benefits from that, 100%. So don't stop it. If you are really concerned about them getting better at football, then the balance is tip it more towards the group stuff as opposed to one to ones. Throw in a one to one every few weeks, or if you want to do one a week, but you're doing two or three group sessions, fine. But don't be tempted to tip the other way. They can be great for beginners and experienced players. So we've had numerous positive benefits we've seen from it. It's just when parents and players, once they understand the whole thing, and I have that conversation with players quite a lot, is this is fine, you're doing it now, but you need to try and do this in at your training. You need to if you want to get better at your shooting, you're going to have to try and shoot more in your training sessions or in your matches. You want to get better at dribbling, it's the same thing. So as long as everybody's on the same hymn page with it, it's fine. It can be great for some short-term support, maybe kids returning after setbacks, things like that, just to give them a bit of a lift. Even like as I could give the example earlier with that boy with the feedback, it's stuff like that where if you're feeling a bit lost, just coming to talk to somebody about it. It can be powerful, no doubt. But anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, there was a girl, wasn't there, just a couple of weeks ago who came down for one, and she she went out of her way and sourced that herself, and she'd her confidence taken a knock in her matches, and she decided herself she wanted some extra one-to-one training. She went and found out about us and went and asked her mum about it, and it turned out her mum knew us through the PE we deliver in school, so that was able to happen. But I'd only encourage that. That's only a positive thing. This player is taking charge of their own learning and development, and yeah, as always, once they get down to the session, advice would be, you're going to get a lot more from being in a group session, but this is a positive. The other side of that, I do sometimes see videos of, like, I'm going to call them young lads, but I think we've been talking about children at this point. Like 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old lads, decent players, whatever, maybe. Sometimes you'll see a group of two or three of them paying to go to one of these one-to-one coaches. Lads, you can do that yourself. You don't need that coach there. You three, the things that they're going to be able to ask you to do, you don't need to pay someone to do that. You know enough about it yourself. Just go out and play, do anything.
Go play Wembley.
Exactly that.
Uh, yeah. So hopefully people get what we're trying to get to where we're trying to come across with this stuff. I think if you are wanting to help your children, it's just finding that balance. But just listen to them. If it is confidence or whatever else, then yeah, like that girl the other week, it can be a massive boost, no doubt about it. But the balance would be that is see like your group training as the main meal, your one-to-one as the supplement. It's probably the best way I'd describe it. Aside from that, I think the things, yeah, I think see him as the tool, not a pathway, is something that I wrote down there. And yeah, if we need any help on this, just talk to us, and you'll always get honest feedback from us in terms of what we can and can't do for children, certainly that are coming to us. But yeah, if you're a parent out there that's not in Leeds that has thought about this sort of stuff, then do feel free to talk to us. If you are a grassroots coach and you want some games-based ideas, get on onlinefootballcourses.com. We've got some free bits on there and some really cheap resources, really, just to give you some ideas and activities you could do with your players. I'll link that down there. If you're in Leeds and you want to come to one of our sessions, I'll link that as well. Aside from that, Nick, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.